So what do you do when you have a budget or used or maybe even a vintage turntable that doesn't have a cartridge? Well, maybe the VM95ML is what you do. Hi, I'm Bob, and you, my friends, are in the United States of analog, and welcome. What do we do here? Well, we have fun with hi-fi. We keep our undiagnosed OCD at bay, and we take a look at products that are fun to listen to, that help us deliver the healing properties of music to our brain, okay? Because we need it in these times. And speaking of these times, it's so nice to hear from people all over the world in the comment section of these videos. In fact, as you can see here, I got my Google Earth out and I started map pinning all the places where you folks have been commenting from, and I really appreciate it. So let's keep the good times rolling, and in the comments, as we talk about our favorite turntables and cartridges, go ahead and let me know where you're from, what city, what country, and you Yanks, you do that too, okay? I want to know where in the United States of analog you're viewing from. All right, so today we are going to be turntable and cartridge centric, because I think I found a little cartridge that you should know about. And really, at the end of the day, what kind of friend would I be to you if I didn't tell you about something cool that I discovered? Now, this is something I discovered way back in the early 80s at a stereo repair shop. It's a Thorens TD166 Mark II turntable. Is it a top-of-the-line Thorens from back in the day? No, I don't think so. This thing was released in 1976. It was produced in Switzerland, and I think this ran all the way to about 1987. It originally sold for 400 Deutschmarks, which is about, my calculations from back in the day, probably around $250. Today, this would be somewhere in the line of maybe a $1,200, $1,300 turntable. Has some very special features. It's trimmed out in this beautiful red oak. I believe it's veneer, not solid wood, but lots of metal accents, this metal plinth plate here, and I don't even know if that's a term, plinth plate, but I just invented it. And, you know, it's got this unique suspension that, you know, I don't see in modern turntables. If you've seen it in a modern turntable, let me know. Let me know what turntable you've seen this in. But if I can just kind of disengage that there, get the tone arm off the mooring there, you can see that the platter and the whole tone arm and gimbal assembly are all locked together. So when one moves, so does the other, which is pretty interesting. I don't know. I've got about 5 or 6 turntables, and I don't have any other turntable that does this. It's 2-speed, 33 and 45. It is not automatic. It's completely manual. Anti-skate is done with this hanging weight here. It's accomplished with that hanging weight. And there's also something very unique about this turntable. And the same thing that makes it unique is the same thing that put it in mothballs for about 5 years. I just recently restored this turntable to its former glory. This TD166 and maybe many other Thorens turntables didn't have a removable head shell, but what it did have was this. This is called a wand. I believe this is a TP63 wand. Actually, I know it's a TP63 wand because it took me about 2 years to find one on eBay, and it cost me $150. And believe me, that was a tough call, not knowing the value of this turntable. But you know, when you own a piece of gear for so long, for decades, you feel like you're the steward of that. You feel like you're the parent of that piece of equipment. And so I wanted to restore it. I wanted to get it back into action. It's not a turntable I use every day, but it's playable. In fact, it's more than playable. It's very playable. And now that I have this wand, which is basically half of a tone arm that screws on here. Anyway, the wand has its advantages in that you can, you know, separate it from the rest of the tone arm and apply the cartridge. But, you know, that being said, even though you can get a good angle on the installation, the way this screws into the head shell is really, really super funky. And I don't know what those crazy Swiss engineers, and I know I've got some viewers in Switzerland, no offense, but those nutty engineers over there really, they really cocked this up a little bit. It's hard, man. It's hard to install a cartridge on the bottom of this thing, and you have to have exactly the right screws, and you have to have a lot of patience. But I've got that on there, and I'm going to put this back because I'm not comfortable shaking it. And, you know, one of the reasons why I needed the new wand was that after so many cartridge exchanges and replacements, the wires started breaking. They got brittle. They broke off. There was really no way to replace the wiring in this thing, at least no way that no user-friendly way. So I waited it out, you know. I was patient, and I waited for one to show up on eBay for 150 bucks. I pulled the trigger. Turns out it was almost in new condition, and adjusted it, checked the anti-skate. Everything works great. Now, what cartridge did I pick for the TD-166 Mark II? And let me preface this by saying I am by no means a cartridge or turntable expert. I know what I like, and when it sounds good, I can recognize that. But I am by no means any kind of electrical or mechanical engineer of any kind, all right? But you know, I used to sell hi-fi in the 70s, and I put a lot of cartridges on a lot of turntables. So I'm pretty good at setting up tables, not so good in understanding the mechanics of them, because several videos ago, a guy wrote me in the comments. He saw this Techniques turntable I have back here, and he saw it in the background. I wasn't even featuring the turntable. It was in the background of the shot. And he writes to me, and he goes, "Man, you can't put an Ortofon 2M blue on a 1200 Mark VII, you know, like the compliance is not," you know what? I put the blue on it, and it sounds fantastic, all right? So, so that's just an example of how crazy things get with turntables and cartridges and compliance and tone arms and anti-skate and azimuth adjustment and vertical tracking and vertical force, and you know, it's crazy, right? And if you're not willing to participate in that kind of craziness like many of us are, then maybe streaming is for you, and maybe streaming is for me. So here's the cartridge I chose. Well, this is the box the cartridge came on because I've already mounted it. It's the Audio-Technica VM95ML. The ML stands for Microline or Microlinear. It's the shape. It's the shape of the stylus as it contacts your record. The Microline has a very specific shape. It is, in this case, on a nude square shank. And I'm assuming the advantages of that, the squareness of it, might be rigidity or something like that. But the important thing about the Microline for me is that it is my perception to my ears that the Microline cartridges produce less noise from the groove. The VM95 retails for about $169, and you can get it on Amazon. I'll have a link below. So for my evaluation, I compared the 95 to two of my other favorite cartridges that I use almost daily, the Nagaoka MP110 and the Ortofon 2M Blue. Now, I'll put links below. Those are some of my daily favorite cartridges. Also, I have a Moonstone, a Sumiko Moonstone, and I also made some comparisons there with regard to output, because output is very important in a cartridge to me. I'm not always using a Phono preamp that has some kind of adjustable gain. Okay, and if you don't have some kind of adjustable gain on your Phono preamp, then you're going to be stuck at whatever output the cartridge is doing. And so the output for the 95ML here is 3.5 millivolts. In comparison, the blue is at 5.5 millivolts, so that's pretty hot. The Sumiko Moonstone, 3.0, so that's a little less. The 95ML has an aluminum cantilever. See what I did there? That's for my friends overseas. It tracks at 1.8 to 2.2 grams, and I track it at the 1.8. I like it as light as possible. Again, it has a nude square shank, and that's a lot of fun to say. It's top mounting, which means for, a lot of the modern day head shells, like this right here, you can drop the screw in from the top and mount the cartridge very easily. I did not do that for the Thorens because I had to screw from underneath the cartridge. Luckily, that screw mount has a pass-through. So I was able to get a thinner mounting screw up through the bottom into the little plate that wiggles around inside of that head shell of the Thorens, and I managed to get it all connected rather snugly. And after that, it was easy just to connect the wires and go. All right, what else? It has a total weight of 6.1 grams and 23 dB channel separation. There are a lot of specs in a cartridge. I think channel separation is something that we're all interested in, as well as output. And again, that's in the same range. I think the blue is at 25, and I think the Nagaoka is also 23, if I remember from my research. And I made some notes about some of the things I really admire about this very budget $169 cartridge. It has very crisp, detailed highs. And I hesitate to use the word crisp because it's so close to crispy, but the sound is not close to crispy. I just want you to know that these are very clear highs, very detailed highs. Smooth bass, you've got great tracking, minimum sibilance, which is important. Sibilance drives me crazy. And if you're new to the turntable game and the cartridge game, and you want to know what sibilance is, it's that tss sound that you get on a lot of vocals. In fact, one of the most sibilant tracks I think I've ever heard is Six Blade Knife on Dire Straits' first album. Now, other than that, that album is impeccably recorded, as are all Dire Straits records. But there's something about Six Blade Knife that makes it super sibilant. And I heard it on the very first OG first pressing I bought back in the day, and I've heard it on just about every version since, including the CD. So, if you don't like that sound, especially in vocals, then get yourself a MICROLINE, or better yet, a Shibata. In fact, speaking of Shibata, which is another shape, the VM95ML is almost at the top of the line of the VM95 series. There's just one above it, and you can replace this with the Shibata version. All right, and that's a discussion. Shibata is a discussion for another video. But again, I think the best quality of the VM95ML is that low surface noise. And if you're like me, next to sibilance, that's the second most annoying thing in a recording in this vinyl game is surface noise. It's just very distracting. Yeah, surface noise is no bueno. So, I just wanted to bring you this recommendation. The VM95ML, again, the cartridge has already been removed, but this is the package. It's from Audio-Technica, $169. I think it's a real value. It's got a slightly smaller form factor than, say, your Moonstone, your Sumikos, and your Ortofons, but it's working great on this vintage table. And from your vintage host, thank you for being in the United States of Analog. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and do all that stuff. I appreciate your support. We're in it to win it here at US of A. We'll see you next time. Switzerland. I think you're the only thing I own from Switzerland. I had a Toblerone bar once, but I don't have it anymore. I ate it.